Hello, welcome to the Smarketing Show. You know, I was on LinkedIn recently and like you, scrolling through, and I watched this video from today's guest, Larry Brush. And here's a guy we got on the show today. He's got a deep background in recruiting and is also a sales leader. And I thought, based on Cheryl, what we're seeing in what people are calling the Great Resignation, why not bring Larry on to coach people on how they may want to rethink about how they attract, recruit, select, people for their business. Now, Cheryl, before the show, you and I were talking, it's not just recruiting millennials and Gen Zs, but we got baby boomers now. And stats indicate that up to 41% of people may be looking for a new job coming up. And that's because they say people have saved money, they've had time to think, maybe they're comfortable working from home. And so, Larry, thanks so much for joining us today. With your background, and you're in the trenches right now too, maybe you could speak to what you think a well thought through hiring process might look like.
Hey, listen, I appreciate it, Rick, and thank you guys for having me on. I truly appreciate it. And yeah, we're in uncharted territory here. None of us obviously has ever come out of a pandemic before and had the different variables that are being thrown our way on what we need to do to try to recruit some quality people. Things have changed. And as always, if you don't change, they'll change you. So, I mean, it's one of those things where we have to take a look at it. And you're talking about a hiring process that does have to be clearly defined these days. I mean, we can no longer just go on out there and wing it and bump into people that are looking for jobs and have a decent response without being totally dedicated and focused on finding and recruiting and landing quality people. So, when it comes to that process itself, and I talk about having it clearly defined, really that starts from a commitment level of the organization themselves, and sitting down as a group with anybody that's going to be a part of that hiring process and clearly define who's going to do what as a part of that hiring process. Secondly, and just as importantly, is the commitment to that. I have seen so many organizations just leave all their good ideas in their boardroom and then come on out. And when it comes to actually time to executing that process, they're not as good as that they should be. And the problem with that is that trickles down to the candidate level. It's very easy for most candidates to be able to see an organization that truly has its act together or is trying to posture itself. Just like any sales manager, such as myself, we're trying to make those judgments every day on our sales representatives and people that report to us. So there has to be a consistency. There has to be a consistency with an organization between what the plan they're putting together, as far as actually following that plan and interacting with the clients, or interacting, with the candidates themselves. So it involves a well-written job description that highlights exactly the types of characteristics of the person, as well as what the expectations of the job are, and those are two different things. What's being done to collect a good pool of candidates? How are you as an organization going to specifically go about recruiting and getting candidates to walk into your door? Another one is the communication mediums that are going to be used as a part of that process is also changing these days. We're on a Zoom meeting right now. That's a part of it. So it has to be decided what part of the process is going to be in person, email, phone, Zoom meetings. There's a lot of different communication methods that we have these days that we need to use. So as a part of that plan, it has to be thought out as far as, okay, what type of communications are we going to use at what part of the process? And then who is going to be a part of that process? Who's going to be a part of those interactions actually with the candidates themselves? And when are they going to interact with that candidate? And then the commitment from each one of those individuals that they're on board and willing to do so and know exactly what they're going to cover with that candidate. So, that's all a part of it. But in the end, also, when that candidate walks in the door, you also have to have in place an onboarding process. Very important that they see a consistency between what happened with them when they went through the process of being recruited and the first day they arrive. But that's a discussion for another day. But you have to be ready as an organization for onboarding.
We do. I definitely want to talk to you about onboarding, Larry. So, we referenced the fact that recruiting in this time is so different because of the pandemic and we're in a different place. So you've got your job description, you've covered all the things that you mentioned, you've described the personality or character, if you will, of this individual. You've gone through the accountabilities and the responsibilities, but it's not just as simple as putting it out there on a job search site. There's more that you have to do to make people want that job. So I want to talk about your thoughts on that.
Oh, fantastic. You're absolutely right. I mean, let's face it, the labor market's tight. It's tough to find quality people for a variety of reasons. So you have to be on your game, and you have to make sure that you're going above and beyond what you might have done in the past prior to the pandemic to make sure that people want your specific job. And that involves a few things. First of all, understand that candidates, once again, they're looking at your behavior. They're looking at your behavior and they're transitioning that in their mind to what is this opportunity going to provide me, and what can I provide this company? And that means responsiveness. You know, I have seen the ball dropped on so many different types of recruiting efforts at one level or another, you know, and specifically when you receive somebody's resume or whatever interaction that you had with them that made that you saw that they were interested in your opportunity, you have to respond within 48 hours. You can't wait any longer, because if you're not, somebody else is. I can guarantee you that. So responsiveness is important, not just on that initial interaction, but between steps of the actual process that you've laid out for yourself. You can't have weeks go by between these steps of the process, or I got news for you, you're not going to have a candidate. It's just not going to happen. You have to be better than your competition, which is the other businesses in your area, or actually anywhere in the world these days, at recruiting people. And that means being responsive. And they take that very seriously with how much you actually value them as an individual. You know, I think a lot of the highest quality candidates, as crazy as this sounds, want to make it hard for themselves to get your job.
Why do you say that? Why do you say
that? Well, because it's a mindset, Rick. It really is. I mean, you know, if you're a quality candidate and you see value in yourself and you know you can bring something to the table for somebody, you just don't want to be thrown into the bunch with everybody else that's just looking to make a paycheck. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to be that person that feels that they're going to be valued and that they're going to be able to bring to the table more than your average individual. And if they don't see a reciprocity of that with the organization that they're talking with, they're gonna devalue you as an organization. If I'm a quality candidate, don't throw me in with the other people that are not, and show me that type of respect as you go through the process. I think that's a mindset of value.
You know, as you're talking, like, you know, pardon my sales DNA, but really what we're mapping out is a buying cycle, for lack of a better, with a potential employee, and each buyer maybe needs to be treated a little differently. In each of those steps in the process should be identified who's doing what. And I think, candidly, it's a game of, you know, you guys call it chutes and ladders in the US, right? It's all over the map sometimes.
Yeah.
And, you know, Cheryl's seen on the digital marketing side, just to your point, our clients are coming to us now saying, hey, we got to beef up our landing strip called our careers page on our site right now, because people are going there and that's got to tell our story with energy, conviction, you know, community engagement. And as we talk to a lot of, you know, we'll call it younger people, like social media is so prevalent. If you look like you're dead on the vine, they're putting all these factors together. Now, here's a question I have for you. So a lot of times, you know, we at Sell to Win and Into, we have a point person that greets any candidate, and maybe, you know, for certain reasons, because we think she emulates kind of the DNA of our culture. And maybe you could speak a little bit to the importance of having the right person, maybe as the point person for recruiting and interviewing.
I'll be honest with you, Rick. I think it's mission critical type of stuff here. I mean, you could actually have a good, well-defined process. And if your point person with that candidate doesn't emulate the type of organization that you are and that you expect that person to be a part of, you got the wrong person on the point. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, they have to have high energy level. They have to be able to think on their feet. They have to be comfortable answering questions about your organization. They got to be highly engaged individuals. They got to be very charismatic. Charisma is super important in this. You want people to be able to sit down with somebody and within the first 15 or 20 seconds say to themselves, you know what? I want to work for this guy. I want to work for these people. This is the type of high energy organization that I want to be a part of. And what's a shame in our industry, or any industry these days, I guess I should say, is that they don't have that right person on the point. And people are actually putting out job descriptions asking for these characteristics. And the first thing that a candidate sees when they walk into the door is that they don't abide by those same rules themselves.
The opposite. Yeah, they see the opposite.
And now you got a problem.
Yeah.
All right. Because a candidate, just like when a sales representative is reporting to a manager, that I think one of the top things that they're looking for is consistency. And when there's not consistency between steps, people, and the business itself, it raises red flags. Just as we're interviewing people, if we don't see consistency from step to step, it raises a red flag in your mind. So having that right person on the point, super important, Rick. It's a great point you brought up there.
I want to talk about how you would identify what we would call the professional interviewee. So these are the people that interview well, they're charismatic, they're very charming, they're very good in person, they say the right things, they do the research, they know how to get through that process. But at the end of the day, sometimes they might not be the right person for the job, or maybe they oversell themselves a little bit in that interview process. So what are your recommendations on being able to avoid hiring the wrong person because that individual was so good in an interview?
Yeah, I mean, we got to separate the social acumen from is this the right person for the job?
Yeah.
And a lot of people get tied up in the social acumen. They can carry themselves well. They got the good energy that I just alluded to. They have those types of things, but you can't just roll with that. You have to do some behavioral interviewing, and behavioral interviewing is what breaks these people down. And the reason why it breaks these people down is because you can ask a question and they'll have the canned response that everybody has. It sounds awesome, right? But then where you can throw them off a little bit is that follow-up question, that question that asks, well, can you give me an example about when this happened? How did you react to it? And what was the result that came from that? Can you tell me a little bit about how you might go about approaching this type of a situation? And now all of a sudden, if you see them starting to break down in their answers, well, now that's a bit of a red flag that you better start digging into and asking more behavioral questions about their character, who they are as a person, what they're all about. So behavioral interviewing, it's a whole different show that we could throw on it, but you have to break these people down and make sure you have the right person for the job. And that's by asking follow-up questions to the standard questions that they're used to answering.
I think I only use behavioral questions in interviews.
It's a great way to go.
I just kind of, that's like my go-to, because you can always say the right thing, but you can't always give an example of how you've done the right thing. That's the difference.
It's amazing how people will scramble when they're asked to do that. Even though a lot of them have already been coached that that's what's going to happen, they still scramble.
So, yeah.
And that's a red flag for somebody that's hiring. And that's another person that's another characteristic of the person that's doing the hiring has to feel comfortable with, is looking at those red flags and taking action on them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Larry, we have this thing in our area that I speak with college graduates before they graduate each year in the digital marketing and sales arena. And I ask them to raise their hand, how many of you, and I don't know if you have this website now where you are called YouTube. And I ask them, how many of you have watched videos on interview simulations and what to say? And typically 70% of the class put their hand up. So I think you're so bang on situational, behavioral, and they use it in non-sales environments, policing, all these critical thinking kind of scenario based. It's very, and yet when we back into sales, we'll talk in our world or marketing, sometimes they're cookie cutter questions. But okay, I'd like to ask you, when I was a VP of sales manager, we went right from kind of resume ABCs to a physical in-person interview. And we've now shifted to this digital world where I think you need to kind of test them using the medium of communication that they would with a customer, whether it's phone, if it's Zoom like this, or a video platform or whatever it is. Maybe you could speak to pre-screening best practices or suggestions you might have.
I think you're right on the money. Yeah, I mean, obviously these types of interactions that we're having here today have skyrocketed since the pandemic. And this is how this is going to be the form that they're going to be selling it a lot more often than what they have in the past. So to actually see how they behave in these situations and how they appear and how they carry themselves is actually even different than it is at face-to-face. So yeah, you have to use these forums such as Zoom when it comes to an initial interaction. I think you're spot on with that. Not only from how somebody can actually envision how they would carry themselves in front of a customer, because let's face it, there's not going to be a more important customer than the people they're working for, and that's why you're on that call. But it's time at that point in time to dig into their character a little bit, find out what motivates them, what's their ability to be able to read people and to react off of it properly. What motivates them, work ethic, interest level in the actual type of work that they're going to be doing for you. Mm-hmm. And you will learn a lot and save a lot of time by excluding candidates from taking that step of the process. And it doesn't have to last any more than 10 minutes of an investment. Mm-hmm. And you're going to know usually within the first 30 seconds, honestly, is this somebody that I want to talk to or not?
Well, I can remember, I was a general sales manager at a copier dealership, and we need to fill some sales roles. And this individual looked great on paper. And sure, old school, we bring him in for a physical interview. And I
Yeah.
remember walking out to the lobby, and here's this young man. He's got a muscle shirt on, and he's got cowboy boots on. Nothing against cowboy boots, but that may not be the profile. And yet I was hooked then for a 30-minute conversation that could have been completely. Anyway, I think people are maybe onto this, but you can't emphasize enough how are we pre-screening even those A's to make sure they're A pluses kind of thing coming in. The other thing we get often is, can we ask people kind of their income expectations? And one of the things I always used to say was, when in the interview, if the person looks good, I would say, hey, it sounds like you could really contribute to our organization. Do you mind if I ask, what do you charge for your services? And I've found that that's a safe, easy way to lay it down, to understand what their income expectations are. And it's an awkward question for a lot of them. And you can really see them do two things. Number one, disclose what their income expectations are. But number B, see how they're going to handle a tough question from a customer, especially if they're in a sales or customer facing role like customer service or whatever. But, I think, let's talk about maybe being on the lookout now, if we can, for people, because we've got people maybe turning over. People have been at home and they're thinking, maybe I don't want to continue where I am. Do you have any suggestions on looking out for the right people?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, we are once again in a whole different arena these days. People are changing jobs. Let's face it, this has been mentally taxing for all of us at a certain level, right? I mean, in the way it's affected our livelihoods, the way it's affected our family lives. And what used to be an easy adaptation going from day to day in a job is gone. We've had our world upset a little bit. There's no question about it. So the things that we need to be able to find out when it comes to individuals is this person ready to possibly re-enter the workforce? Are they mentally engaged enough to get things rolling again? And once again, to make sure that we're filtering people out of the people persons type of a mentality to, are they truly ready to commit themselves to a profession? I mean, I've seen it many, many times. I mean, we all have pet peeves in interviews that have done a ton of interviews in the past. And I can tell you my number one is when you sit down and you ask somebody, if you're talking about sales opportunity, can you tell me a little bit about why you think you might be a good fit for sales? And on cue, because I'm a people person, and those people, what drives me nuts a little bit about those people is that they're going to be overemphasizing their social skills once again, and don't realize the level of commitment that it takes to learn the other types of skills that you need to be a true professional sales representative. There's so much to learn, and a commitment that you need to put into yourself on an ongoing basis to not just learn products, but to relearn how to do business. And that's what we're going through right now. We're completely changed our sales cycle and completely changed how we're interacting with people. And you got to adapt and overcome, or you're going to be in the back seat looking in.
Hey, Larry, to your point, I remember when I was looking for my first job, and I just wanted a sales job. And the interview was with the Xerox Corporation, and they went through 3 interviews, different people looked at you, et cetera. But I remember I was on my final interview and they said, Rick, you mentioned you're a people person, you like dealing with people. We got an opportunity right now in customer service that's open right now that you would be perfect for. Would be open to that. And I didn't realize at the time, but they were testing whether I just wanted a job or I wanted a sales job. And thank heavens, I said, I'm looking for sales. Anyway, I think there's, I always say successful processes leave clues. And, I know, Cheryl, you want to have Larry talk about some of the great things he's doing for children and stuff like that. Any closing thoughts, Larry, on just the recruiting side of things right now, given it's going to be a real, I think, priority for a lot of companies? Any closing thoughts on that?
There's a lot on managers' minds, upper management's minds these days about how they're going to structure their companies, big picture stuff that's really important. I guess in a nutshell, I would say don't underestimate the old adage of you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. and to give that level of commitment to recruitment as much as you do the big picture stuff that you're trying to put in place to reinvigorate a company or to take your company to the next level. This is not something that can be a secondary issue in anybody's mind these days. The pool of people is too narrow out there. You got to make it a priority by doing some of the things we talked about today. That's all I could say.
Yeah, Larry, thank you so much for coming on. Before we go, really quickly, you're doing some really good things within the organization, but K-12 print, but then also for the community. So I just want to give you a few seconds to just kind of reference that quickly.
Oh, thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, very quickly, K-12 print. Well, what's our value-added proposition? That's what everybody always asks about your company. Well, our value-added proposition is that 5% of the revenues that come in from our customers, and our customers are the heroes here, we transition into building 21st century classrooms in underserved areas of the country, and in boys and girls clubs and neighborhoods that are not the greatest. And we build these classrooms with the idea of these kids walking into a boys and girls clubs at the end of their day or in the middle of the day, whatever it might possibly be, and to be placed into an arena where they can truly be fully engaged and learn and find their way and find what they're interested in, and therefore allowing them to have a much better chance at having a successful life, a successful family life, and help out their community. So that's what K-12 print does, is we're trying to take kids that are at risk and turn them into people that can enjoy their lives and have other people enjoy them.
That's awesome. Larry, thank you. K12print.com if anyone's interested in more information about your organization. Thank you for your insight. And of course, you can connect with Larry, as always, on LinkedIn.
Yeah, why not, huh?
Good job,
I appreciate
Larry.
the time, you guys.
Thanks for joining us today. Keep up the great job you're doing, both with K-12 and for the kids. They deserve it.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Thanks, Cheryl. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see everybody next week on the Smarketing Show.